The 1972 Nicaragua earthquake, one of the most devastating natural disasters in Central American history, struck the capital city of Managua on December 23, 1972. This catastrophic event not only resulted in significant loss of life and widespread destruction but also profoundly impacted the country's socio-political landscape. On the night of December 22, 1972, Managua was bustling with activity as residents prepared for the Christmas holiday. The city, home to over 400,000 people, was the political, economic, and cultural heart of Nicaragua. The early morning hours of December 23 would change that forever. At 12:29 a.m., a powerful earthquake measuring 6.3 on the Richter scale struck just 28 kilometers northeast of the city center. The quake lasted for about 30 seconds, but its effects were devastating. The shallow depth of the earthquake, only about 10 kilometers below the surface, intensified the destruction. Buildings, including homes, hospitals, schools, and government offices, crumbled under the immense force. The epicenter of the earthquake was located beneath Lake Zolotlan, which borders Managua. This proximity to the lake added to the devastation, as the liquefaction of the sandy soil caused many structures to collapse. In some areas, the ground itself seemed to flow like water, swallowing buildings and people alike. The immediate aftermath was chaotic and horrifying. Power lines were down, and fires erupted throughout the city, further compounding the disaster. Thousands of people were trapped under the rubble, and the city's infrastructure was left in ruins. An estimated 10,000 people were killed, 20,000 were injured, and over 250,000 were left homeless. The heart of Managua was effectively destroyed, with around 75% of the city's buildings either damaged or completely demolished. The response to the disaster revealed deep flaws in the country's governance and infrastructure. The Nicaraguan government, led by President Anastasio Somoza Debayle, was criticized for its slow and inadequate response. International aid began to pour in, but allegations of corruption and mismanagement plagued the relief efforts. Reports emerged that aid supplies were being hoarded or sold on the black market by government officials, rather than reaching those in desperate need. One of the most poignant aspects of the disaster was the community's immediate response. Despite the chaos, Nicaraguans banded together to search for survivors, provide food and shelter, and rebuild their lives. Makeshift shelters sprang up throughout the city, and volunteers worked tirelessly to rescue those trapped beneath the rubble. The earthquake had long-term impacts on Nicaragua. The economic damage was estimated at over $800 million, a staggering sum for the small, impoverished nation. The destruction of Managua's central business district and government buildings necessitated a lengthy and costly reconstruction process. Many people were displaced permanently, and the social fabric of the city was altered irrevocably. Politically, the earthquake contributed to growing discontent with the Somoza regime. The perceived corruption and inefficiency in handling the crisis eroded public trust and fueled opposition movements. This discontent eventually contributed to the Sandinista Revolution, which overthrew the Somoza dictatorship in 1979. In the years following the earthquake, Managua began to rebuild, but the city never fully recovered its former status. The reconstruction process was slow and fraught with challenges, and the city's layout was changed dramatically. Many areas that were once bustling with activity were abandoned or repurposed.
Timing of the earthquake. The earthquake struck in the early hours of December 23, 1972, while most people were asleep, which increased the death toll as many were caught off guard and trapped in their homes. Liquefaction of soil. the proximity of the epicenter to Lake Zolotlan led to the liquefaction of sandy soil in Managua. This phenomenon caused the ground to behave like a liquid, exacerbating the collapse of buildings and infrastructure. Corruption and mismanagement. The relief efforts were marred by allegations of corruption and mismanagement by the Somoza government. Reports of aid supplies being hoarded or sold on the black market rather than distributed to those in need added to the disaster's tragedy. Slow government response. Despite the magnitude of the disaster, the Nicaraguan government's response was slow and inadequate, leading to widespread criticism and contributing to political instability. Transformation of Managua. The earthquake led to a dramatic and permanent change in Managua's layout. Many areas that were once central to the city's business and social life were abandoned or repurposed during the reconstruction process. Impact on political landscape. The earthquake indirectly contributed to the eventual overthrow of the Somoza regime. The disaster and the government's handling of it fueled public discontent and helped galvanize opposition movements, including the Sandinista Revolution. Community resilience. Despite the chaos and destruction, the immediate community response was one of solidarity and resilience. Ordinary citizens banded together to conduct rescue operations, provide aid, and rebuild their lives, showcasing remarkable strength in the face of disaster. Lack of immediate international response. Although the tragedy garnered international attention, the immediate response and aid were hampered by the challenging conditions and the remote location of Armoro, delaying critical assistance to the survivors.